Direct News TV. December 28, 2023. Israel-Hamas war live, Israeli goal in Gaza, forced displacement, UN envoy. Addressing the UN Security Council, Palestine's UN envoy says the wide-scale destruction of Gaza by Israeli operations has made it clear their sole goal is forced displacement. Israel's security forces say they have neutralized a man who they say stabbed two people in an attack at the Masmoria checkpoint, south of occupied East Jerusalem. Biden admin again bypasses Congress in possible Israel weapons sale. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has approved the potential sale M107 155mm projectiles and related equipment to Israel, according to the sale. The Pentagon said that Blinken determined that an emergency exists that requires the immediate sale to Israel, thereby waiving the congressional review requirements, according to the Pentagon. The approved potential sale of the bursting artillery rounds is valued $147.5 million. The Biden administration had previously bypassed Congress to approve the sale to Israel of nearly 14,000 rounds of tank ammunition worth more than $106 million earlier this month. The move comes as several prominent U.S. legislators have called for weapons sales to Israel to be conditioned on concrete steps to de-escalate the violence and lower civilian casualties in Gaza. Israeli forces detain critically wounded teenager in Qalqilia, Health Ministry says. The Palestinian Ministry of Health says a 17-year-old boy who was shot in the chest by Israeli forces has been detained in the occupied West Bank. The teen, identified by local media as Hamza Mohsen Shreem, was arrested in an ambulance vehicle at a checkpoint while medics were trying to move him from Qalqilia Hospital to a facility in Nablus. Earlier, Wafa news agency said two Palestinians were wounded when Israeli soldiers opened fire towards them near the eastern entrance to Qalqilia. Hamas officials says no captives will be released without ceasefire. Speaking with Al Jazeera, Osama Hamdan responded to Israeli media reports that Hamas was nearing an agreement on a new captive release deal. Hamdan said Hamas informed all mediators that their priority is to stop the aggression against Gaza once and for all. He said there is currently no talk of a captive exchange before fighting in Gaza stops. He added that a possible release of captives in exchange for a month-long ceasefire, a detail that was reported by Israeli media, has not been discussed. Israeli attacks continue across southern, central Gaza. We have been hearing sounds of explosions from Khan Yunis from our location in Rafah, as the military confrontations continue. The Israeli occupation forces had dropped different leaflets for the residents to keep fleeing to the south of the Gaza Strip. But during the last couple of hours, a residential building in Rafah had been attacked by the Israeli air forces where a number of Palestinians were injured, the vast majority of them were young children. The attacks also extended to the middle governorates of the Gaza Strip, the key urban areas that have been the main focus for the Israeli military ground operations during the last couple of days. Burej, Al-Maghazi and Nuseirat refugee camp. Aid entering Gaza not meeting basic needs of Palestinians, Foreign Ministry says. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry says Israel is deliberately limiting the amount of aid entering the Gaza Strip and is depriving Palestinians of their basic humanitarian needs. The aid currently entering the Strip does not even meet the bare minimum of what is required, especially in northern Gaza, the ministry said in a statement. It condemned an Israeli attack on an aid convoy traveling along a road designated for its use by the army in northern Gaza. On top of indiscriminate bombardment, Israeli forces are using hunger and the spread of diseases as tools to commit genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, the statement continued. It also called for the UN Security Council to reconvene and issue a resolution that calls for an immediate ceasefire. Domestic factors limit Israel's time to wage war on Gaza. Giorgio Cafiero, CEO of Gulf State Analytics, tells Al Jazeera that factors such as the negative effect the war is having on Israel's economy will decide how long the war lasts. There's also the factor of war fatigue on the Israeli public, he said. These will be the factors that pressure the Israeli government to wind down the war. Unfortunately, I don't think U.S. pressure is going to push Israeli leadership to wind down the conflict, he continued, citing the soft stance the administration of President Joe Biden has taken towards Israel. All of the war crimes we've seen, none of that is resulting in giving Israel any ultimatums or setting forth any red lines, Cafiero said. The support from Team Biden has been ironclad this entire time. I don't expect that to change. U.S. welcomes Denmark sending frigate to Red Sea. The U.S. has faced reluctance from some allies over the coalition, which is aimed at protecting commercial shipping in the Red Sea amid threats from the Yemen-based Houthis. It has said 20 countries have joined the coalition, but has only named 12. Denmark is home to Maersk, one of the world's largest commercial shipping companies. Qatar official tells Israel Hamas is ready in principle to resume captive negotiations, report. Israeli news site Walla has reported that Qatari officials passed this message to Israel. Efforts to resume negotiations have been at an impasse since a previous break in fighting ended in November. Al-Quds Brigade's claims latest attack on Israeli vehicle. The armed wing of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad says it targeted the vehicle with an RPG shell northeast of Burej refugee camp in Gaza. This is what the future wants, young people to call for ceasefire on New Year's Eve. Speaking to Al Jazeera, Bushra Mohammed, a spokesman for the Countdown to Ceasefire campaign, said the project is calling on people around the world to call for a ceasefire on New Year's Eve. This will be the largest call for a ceasefire, and it will be live-streamed throughout the night at every hour to show the global call for a ceasefire, she said. It is absolutely crucial for young people's voices to be heard, she said. Because this is what the future wants, she said. We want a ceasefire, a permanent and an immediate one, because the suffering has gone on for far too long. Hezbollah in southern Lebanon will never be the same again, Israeli military spokesman. In his daily news conference, Daniel Hagari has said Israel over the last 2 days carried out widespread strikes by fighter jets, tanks and artillery on Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon. He added that Hezbollah in southern Lebanon no longer looks the same as it did on October 6, and it will never be the same again. Fighting has continued on the Israel-Lebanon border since October 8, with Hezbollah saying its goal is to pull Israeli military resources away from Gaza. Iraq armed group claims latest attacks on military bases. The U.S. military has said bases in Iraq and Syria housing its personnel have been targeted over 100 times since October 7. The Islamic Resistance in Iraq, an umbrella group containing several Iran-aligned militias, has claimed the latest attack, saying it targeted a base in al-Shaddadi, Syria. Earlier, the group said its fighters had targeted a base housing U.S. personnel in Karab al-Jur, Syria. The U.S. military did not immediately confirm the latest attacks. UN relief chief condemns Israeli army attack on aid convoy. Martin Griffiths says on X that attacks on humanitarian workers are unlawful. We've been reporting on allegations from a UNRWA official that Israeli forces fired on an aid convoy as it traveled from northern Gaza to Rafah, along a route designated by the Israeli army. The convoy was clearly marked and its movements were coordinated with the parties, Griffiths said. Digital censorship making Palestinians live more difficult, analyst. Responding to a Human Rights Watch report that documented systemic censorship of Palestinian content on platforms owned by Meta, Mona Shtaya, a non-resident fellow at Tahrir Institute for Middle East Policy, said that the discriminatory policies and algorithms are treading on Palestinians' rights. It's also making Palestinians less safe, she said. We're seeing this across other platforms. We have seen rights violations on TikTok and on YouTube, she told Al Jazeera from Ramallah. Let's be clear here, these platforms are widespread and widely used between Palestinian users, to share documentation of human rights violations around, and they're also sharing life-saving information on those platforms, she said. When there is censorship happening, people won't be able to access those life-saving posts. Israel rejects South African genocide appeal to ICJ. A statement from the Israeli Foreign Ministry says that South Africa's launch of a case against it is baseless blood libel with no legal merit. South Africa is collaborating with a terrorist group that calls for Israel's destruction, the statement said. The people of Gaza are not an enemy of Israel, who is making efforts to limit harm to non-combatants. Earlier, we reported that South Africa instituted proceedings at the International Court of Justice against Israel, describing its actions in Gaza as genocidal in character because they are intended to bring about the destruction of a substantial part of the Palestinian national, racial and ethnical group. My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post. You won't regret it.